Okay, so blockchain 1.0, which ends up being Bitcoin. That's what we're going to discuss in this video. Now, I'm going to try to keep the video as short as I can, so I may have to break this up into two parts or 2 or 3 part series, I don't know. But I will keep each of the videos as short as I possibly can. So before we get started, let's do a recap. And 2 videos back, we talked about blockchain 0.0, or the birth or the conception of blockchain. And the issue back then was how everything is becoming digitalized. How do we create or find a way to timestamp the documents, give the documents a unique cryptographic identifier or a fingerprint, which is what we call a hash today, and be able to sign the document, create trust without a third party, and be transparent and easily verified by anyone, anywhere. So that's what blockchain 0.0 was all about. And it is what brought forth blockchain in and of itself. All of this took place in between 1889 and right around 1889, and then in 1989, and then in 1990 it was actually implemented. Again, we had an issue: how do we actually uniquely identify digital documents or digital things? And the only way to do that was the creation of blockchain. If you want to know more about that, up here in the upper right hand corner you'll see a link to the video concerning blockchain 0.0. Then in the next video we covered money and what it really is, and people do not have an understanding of what money is. Basically, money is anything, literally anything, that is scarce, recognizable, divisible, fungible, portable, and durable. We know that money started out with trade. I need this item. I don't have anything to give to you, so let me get that off of you. I'll borrow that from you, and I'll pay you back later. It was a mental ledger that eventually became a written ledger, and from written ledgers became the international or earthwide merchants, which later become the banks. And they started issuing loans on money that did not exist. That's literally what banks began to do, and it became centralized, took over every nation on earth as national banks. So that's, they consider themselves national banks, and yet these national banks have nothing to do at all with those nations. They simply issue and control the money of that nation. Each nation is supposed to issue and control its own money, but these international merchants, which became the banks, are the ones that ended up controlling and issuing all of this, and they are separate from and independent of the nations that they are issuing and controlling the currency for. For example, the Federal Reserve Bank has nothing at all to do with the federal government of the United States of America. And again, these banks are not accountable to any nation nor the people of any nation. They can create money out of thin air and require it all back, plus interest that was never printed to start with. So they're going to issue out a loan, and they're going to say, here, I'll give you this amount of money. We'll just create it on a ledger out of thin air. We'll just say that you have this amount of money, that we just loaned you this amount of money. We need this amount of money back, plus the interest that we are not going to print. We're not going to print that money that you owe in interest. So you have to somehow come up with the interest that doesn't exist to pay the interest on the loan that you are receiving. Now, all this works out because they just keep printing more and more and more and more money. Or notes, or IOUs, right? These are Federal Reserve notes. A note is an IOU. Note is a financial term, and when you look up the definition, it is an IOU. That's what a note is. The financial instrument called a note is an IOU. We also discovered that all money is debt money. They are IOUs, and therefore the more fiat currency, the more paper money that you own, the more debt you own. And not only the more debt that you own, but the more debt that your nation owns, because you are receiving debt money from a private, independent bank that is outside of your nation, that is issuing and controlling that money. These international banks can simply change numbers on a digital registry. It is a digital registry nowadays, and in order to add or create more money or take it away, from the economy to create a depression or what have you. All of the depressions in history are all created by these national banks. The suffering of the people comes from this centralized control of issuing and controlling money. Also, they are basically create and fund all the wars that take place on this earth. And so without these centralized banking systems or these centralized merchant families, you wouldn't have all of these wars. They also control the governments, because whoever controls the money controls the government. They can determine what legislation is going to get passed or not passed. And we have all of these issues that arise from one simple thing called a central bank or a central monetary control. They have an unlimited supply, always keeping a perfectly balanced ledger, and only quote-unquote the people suffer. Not the banks, nor the governments, nor the corporations. In other words, only the living suffer. Okay, not the non-living things. The governments don't suffer. The corporations and institutions and companies and entities out there do not suffer. Only the living people suffer. We also learned that all current fiat money, that is commodity money, is based on trust, not on a thing such as gold, salt, platinum, dung, silver, or fish, but in an actual person or entity, usually a government or a central bank. And you're trusting in a government, and then here's the thing about this: you're trusting in a government that has no oversight or knowledge of the money that's being printed and issued and controlled. All knowledge and oversight of money is with the international merchant families or the goldsmiths. And also, when you deposit money into a bank, you literally give your money away to the bank. You no longer own that money. And a government entity or bank can freeze or seize your account, and you lose everything and will never ever get it back. They can do it for any number of reasons, such as they think that you have done some fraud, or you are possibly owes child support, or maybe you're doing money laundering, or any simple suspicion that they have of any number of other things. They can simply shut down and freeze your account, and you lose all funds in that account. In other words, depositing money into a bank is a very, very high risk thing to do. But the people, quote unquote, the people, have no clue about any of this, and then next thing they know, their money is frozen and they no longer have access to it, because that money doesn't belong to them, because they deposited it into a bank rather than positing it into a bank. They deposit it, which means they handed over that money to the bank. The bank now owns that money, not the individual who deposited it. It is one of the biggest frauds ever committed against the people everywhere on this earth. The word fiat itself means is a Latin word, and it means by decree. Government, quote unquote, orders that the paper has value. The people trust the government. Today, we know this thing as a legal tender. Again, they're trusting a government that they think is controlling that central bank, but the central bank is independent of that nation. The governments of that nation have no oversight of that. We have no idea how many US dollars there really are. We have no idea what the ledgers are. We have no idea of anything. Only the central bank and the merchant families are allowed to look into that information. The governments of the nations are not allowed to look into that. This allows them, because they're centralized and controlling and issuing money, to change the ledger however they want, and nobody has any idea what is going on in any way, form, or fashion. Again, when you deposit the money into the bank, you give it to them to do as they will and to please, and this is where fractional reserve banking comes in. You deposit $100, they can take 97% of that and loan it out, but keep yours as $100. So your bank statement shows you have $100, but they lent out $97, which they had to create out of thin air because your bank account still has that $100. So that $97 that they created to loan out to somebody else is created out of thin air, put on a ledger, balanced out, and nobody is any wiser to what's really going on. And so we have all of this money that is being created out of thin air, and there are no dollars to actually back up that money. Today's money is also digital. Okay, a ledger exists in every central bank of every nation on earth. Each central bank has smaller branches scattered throughout the nation, keeping track of who has what money in what account. Some people, such as myself, actually work through cash only. That's how I have operated for the last 11 years of my life. I don't act or use any other thing except for cash, because I understand the FRAUD that's taking place and the fractional reserve banking and all of the other concepts that are involved here. However, I do want to make something clear for those other people out there like me that have been using cash all of this time, right? So every dollar that there is, right, every dollar that has ever been printed has basically a serial number or barcode on it. Right, it's a serial number. And if you ever look at the bank and you see them rolling these $100 bills through this machine, it's actually scanning the serial number of that $100 bill or that dollar bill or that $5 bill or 10, whatever Federal Reserve note that you're dealing with. So the banks know exactly who got that cash, right? So it's not a mystery. It's not like they don't know how much cash you have. They know, because when you go deposit or when you take a check that you got from your employer and you go to the bank and you cash that out, all of that money is run through that machine, and all those serial numbers are tied to your name of all that cash that you just received. So they know exactly how much cash you have. It's traceable, right? A lot of people move to cash because they want to get away from being able to be traced by the government. But the serial numbers on all bills nowadays, or notes, make it traceable as soon as you cash that check. Or if you withdraw money from an ATM, again, those serial numbers are recorded and put into the ledger, and they know exactly who has that cash and how much cash they have, because everything is digitalized now. However, some of us, such as myself again, we even get paid in cash. Therefore, we don't need to go to an ATM, and we don't need to go to the bank itself and cash the check, right? Therefore, they cannot trace where that money is or who has that money. But I want you to understand that it is still tracked, even though you did not go through a bank or an ATM. The way this works then is that somebody somewhere, whether it's your boss or somebody else, right, at some point cashed that money out through an ATM and to receive that cash, or through a bank, right, cashing out a check or withdrawing money from their bank account. Somehow that cash got out of the bank and into an individual's hands. So that's traceable by the serial numbers on the cash that was withdrawn from the banks or ATMs or whatever. So they know who got that money, but they don't know anything from that point onward. So when that individual hands that cash to you as payment for the works that you've done, the banking system has no idea who has that money now. It's been moved, but they don't know it's been moved. However, when you go to the store and you buy an item, that store then takes that cash and puts it into their bank account. When they do, it runs through that machine, and that serial number shows up, and then they are tracing that serial number again. And so they may not know what happened between the time it left the bank and the time it arrived at any given store, but once it does arrive at that store, they are again able to track that money once again. So even cash is traceable and trackable. You cannot hide behind cash. And now for those who are using PayPal, debit cards, prepaid cards, credit cards, Cash App, or any other service that's out there, those people are already using digital money. If you are operating in cash, you are also already using digital money, because all those serial numbers are being traced and tracked wherever they go and however they're spent, wherever they're withdrawn, etc., etc., etc. So no matter how you are functioning, you are already involved in digital cash, period. There's no way around it. It's part of being in the beast system, or the mark of the beast, or being involved in the mark of the beast. Remember what the scriptures tell everybody. All will receive the mark of the beast, both small and great, in every category of people. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're alive during this time period of the beast system, you have that mark, and there's no way around it until you decide to come out of her, because you're one of his people. But the option of coming out of her was not available until recently, until blockchain 1.0 and onward. Okay, before blockchain 1.0, there were many attempts to create a digital currency that is separate from all the various nations. There's many attempts, but they all failed. We know one of these, for example, JFK Sr. tried to create the silverback dollar, silverback or goldback dollar, all that kind of stuff, right? And they took him out for doing so because, again, the beast system was in control for a period of time. But I want you to understand that every single year that passes, there are less and less and less and less people using cash, and over 75% of the population of the earth right now is already using, in some way, form, or fashion, digital money. And if you include the people that use cash, that means the actual physical Federal Reserve debt money, then even those people are, like we already discussed, are using digital money. It's already digitized. Therefore, really, 100% of the population of the earth is already in digital money. However, if you remove the cash side of it, the people that are operating in cash, then it's 75% of the entire population. But year by year, that number is growing. It's 75, then 76, then 78%, 80%, 90%. Eventually, there will be no cash. And there's a very good reason for this. It has nothing to do with the end times or anything like that. It's simply a lot easier to carry digital money than it is to actually carry physical money that people can rob off of you, take off of your body, etc., 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 right? There's a lot of reasons. Instead of carrying paper around, you just carry your private keys and your wallet that is digitalized. So it's a lot easier to do things, and you can interact anywhere on earth within seconds rather than days to weeks. But no matter what happens, within the next 15 years, there will not be any cash on this earth. But I want you to take note right here and right now that digital money and cryptographic digital money are not truly the same exact thing. They're really completely, utterly different than one another. Cryptocurrency type of money is a step above digital, as we will learn in this video. But coming back to the previous video, banking, or money and what exactly it is. If you want more information on that, you can go right here in the upper right hand corner and click on that video. Go watch that video and then return back to this video. It's important that you watch all these videos in order to get a complete understanding of what's happening. What God is doing for quote unquote the people on this earth is absolutely insanely amazing. A whole new world is being created. We are at the birth of this new world. And either the people are going to remain in the fear-based narratives, or they're going to come out and begin to develop this new world, this world of righteousness. It's one of the two. Either you're going to continue in the fear-based narrative, and you're just going to continue until you get to your point of precipice, or you're going to come out of it and you're going to begin the process of developing this new world. But everyone's going to have to do it. Eventually, everyone will be in the new world, irregardless of what they're doing, whether they stay in the narrative or don't. Okay, but if you stay in the narrative, you're going to get all the way down to your point of precipice. It's that simple. That's what the entire movie is designed to do, is to bring you to a point of precipice so that you're willing to make a change, to take away the control of the controllers once and for all on the face of this earth. Alright, so now that we've covered the two different videos that we've already made, let's talk about Bitcoin. So in October of 2008, this white paper showed up out of nowhere, right? And this white paper was left on a popular cryptography blog site that became the white paper for Bitcoin, and it's called a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, written by Satoshi Nakamoto, right? So this Satoshi Nakamoto, nobody knows exactly who this individual or group of individuals is. This individual named Satoshi Nakamoto is basically equivalent to the letter operation that took place after Trump went into office, in order to get people to wake up and to think for themselves and to use logic and to do research and to come to an understanding and to a place in their life where they are really willing to come back to that point way back when the United States was created, where people returned back to God, believed in God, trusted in God, walked with God, in order to create a nation of free people. This time, however, as we're coming into blockchain, the blockchain phases and digital currencies and cryptographic currencies, this is not going to be just for a single nation, but this is going to be for all, quote unquote, the people all over the earth, in every given nation on the earth. And nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. Nobody has any idea. Okay, there's been many people that, ideas out there that people have thrown out there. People have said it's Elon Musk. Some have said Donald Trump. But whoever it is, we don't know who it is, right? And we don't know if it's a single individual or a group of people. We don't know. But whoever it is, and whether it's a single or a group of individuals, whoever it is a multi-billionaire today. Period. It's that simple. A very wealthy billionaire. No questions about it. They have to be. There's no other option. And we may never, ever, under any circumstance, ever learn who Satoshi Nakamoto is. We may never understand or know the truth about that. And I don't personally think that it'll ever be revealed, because the whole point was to create a whole new monetary system in which the people themselves are the bank. Rather than having centralized control, the people themselves become the bank. And that was the whole point. And then from one simple concept, one white paper, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, we'll talk about that in a second, but a cash system, okay, that's what we're going to talk about in a second. But from that would be the capability of all sorts of different types of cryptographic currencies, not just Bitcoin. But understand that without Bitcoin coming into existence, none of the changes that we're beginning to see and the removal of the controllers could take place unless that Bitcoin, that first cryptocurrency, came into existence. And so Bitcoin is a very important key player in absolutely everything. And again, it is blockchain 1.0. Now, Bitcoin itself is not quote-unquote blockchain, but Bitcoin rides on blockchain, and so it became blockchain 1.0. You had the conception of blockchain 0.0, the conception of blockchain, and then the first use case of blockchain in as far as financially was in Bitcoin. So you had the original 0.0, which was creating a unique identifier for every digital document, and then from there we moved into blockchain 1.0, which was the ability to keep a ledger of transactions. Alright, so now I brought you over here to the white paper. It is Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic or digital cash system. So I want you to pick up on this word cash, okay? So you're still dealing with cash. When you're dealing with Bitcoin, you're dealing with cash. You're dealing with digitalized cash. Okay, this is no different than the digital cash that we have today. If you have cash, if you have Federal Reserve notes, $1, a $10 bill, $5 bill, and you hold cash and operate in cash, it is a digital cash. Just because you have paper and you're working with paper money, fiat currency, right, by decree currency, does not mean it's not digitalized. It's already digitalized. Every single dollar, $5 bill, $10 bill, all the bills, all the notes, all the IOUs have serial numbers. It's already digitalized. The only thing is that you're holding the physical cash rather than the digital version of that cash. And understand that the digital currency, there is far more digital cash than there is actual physical cash. If everybody went to the bank and decided to withdraw all of their money from the bank all of a sudden, it would be very quickly realized all over the earth that there aren't even there's not enough dollar bills in existence to cover the amount of digital cash that exists. Okay, this is one of the issues that Bitcoin fixes. I'm going to leave a link to this this white paper for you guys. It's not that long, guys. It's 9 pages. You can read it for yourself, and it gives you an idea of how Bitcoin operates, how transactions take place, how blocks are built, how cryptography is involved in all of that. If anytime that you are going to do investments, guys, you have to read the white paper of that thing that you are planning to invest in. I cannot stress this enough. No matter who you listen to on YouTube, understand a lot of these YouTubers out here that are dealing in the cryptocurrency world are promoting and pushing those things that they are invested in, so that they can their investments can increase as you buy into whatever it is that they're already involved in. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, it is your responsibility and your duty to do your own due diligence, to do your own research before you invest into anything. Nobody can give you financial advice. You have to research your own. This is one of the things that the letter operation taught everybody. You have to think for yourself, come out of groupthink. And if you think that the cryptocurrency industry is any different, you have lost your mind. Believe me, the big families out there that run things right now, that are the controllers, do not want the people to enter into digital currency or to cryptographic currency, because it is their undoing. So they're going to be negative, they're going to be fear-based in everything that has to do with cryptocurrency. Remember, they control the narratives until they can't do it anymore, which is part of what Web 2.0 and Web 3.0 is in the process of doing. Let me give you an example. So an example of centralized to decentralized, right? Before the internet, you had to get your news through the controllers. It was just that simple. The controllers of mankind is the only ones through whom you could get your news. So this meant the newspapers, the radios, the televisions, etc., right? You had to go to the controllers to learn anything that you needed to know. However, after the internet, anyone can research, discover, and find alternate news or fact-checked what the controllers were telling the people. Okay, I'm not talking about going to the fact checkers, because the fact checkers are the controllers themselves fact checking to keep control of the narrative. But I am talking about everyday we the people all over the earth that have gone out and took the time while you were working to do the research, and then to bring that research that they've done and bring to you actual, genuine, documented fact to show you that what the controllers are telling the people is a lie and a deception, in order to control a narrative, in order to get people to do what they want them to do. So the people, that choose to be, were now free and being controlled by false narratives. Okay, those who chose to no longer be under control began to do their own research, began to do their own logical thinking, got out of groupthink and did all these other things, and began to do their research and come to the actual genuine facts, and discard anything that the controllers were putting out there. So in effect, without the internet, you had to believe whatever the controllers wanted you to believe, so you would do or accept what they wanted you to do or accept. Internet took away their power and took away all of their fear-based tactics. But without that internet, you would still be under those fear-based tactics and still be believing those narratives that the controllers were putting out there. This is the power of going from centralized, where it was centralized by certain people that controlled the news papers, the news stations on TV programming, the radio, all of the different things, the centralized control of the narrative. And with the internet, it became a decentralized thing, where you could go to hundreds of thousands of different people that while you didn't have the time to do the research, they did the research, brought forth the facts, and showed you all the truth, and showed you the documented fact, whereas the news and newspapers and all the television shows and all this other stuff were out here saying according to our sources, but won't tell you who the sources are and won't give you any documented fact, but they cause you to believe a certain way so that you'll act a certain way, etc., etc., etc. The internet decentralized all of that. So what Bitcoin is to fiat digital money or digital currency is what the internet was to the narrative control. Let me say that again. Bitcoin is to the fiat and digital money / currency what the internet was to narrative control. Right? Right now, all money is centralized in any given national banking system. They can change any zeros and ones and all sorts of things on their ledger, keep everything balanced, and nobody has a clue what's going on. They can freeze accounts, take your money, collect a tax, do whatever they want to do, and tax you to death and cause recessions and do whatever they want, because it is completely and utterly centralized with no oversight and no control by any government or any we the people or any other thing. It is completely and utterly centralized. Bitcoin removed that central power and authority and took it and put it with each and every single one of, quote unquote, the people anywhere on the earth. So rather than going through the third party, the bank, and then to move money to somebody else, you can go peer to peer and move it from you to somebody else without any third party involved, period. So with Bitcoin, you and you alone can access your funds. No banks, no governments, no entity, nor any other thing can access your funds. You and you alone have absolute control over it. Whereas if you take your money and you deposit it into a bank, you no longer have control over that money. It appears that you do because you can write a check or you can withdraw it from an ATM, whatever, but you deposited that money, and you first of all, when you deposit the money, you give that money over to the bank. You no longer own it in any way, form, or fashion. Number two, you enable the bank to do fractional reserve banking, which means they can create money out of thin air because you deposited the money to them. With Bitcoin, none of that can happen without your permission. It's you and you alone that are in control. With Bitcoin, you are the bank, and all middlemen are removed. That's what the point of Bitcoin is. Also with Bitcoin, the unbanked or underbanked, or those who have no access to banks, or the people of the earth that the banks deemed useless and having no need of banks, can now access funds that were previously unavailable to them. In today's world, you can use Bitcoin in the real world through various companies that already accept Bitcoin as payment, such as Microsoft, ANX Bank, that is ANX Bank, Crypto.com, the app, if you use the debit card, can be used at any store that accepts a Visa card. Expedia, Wikipedia accepts donations in Bitcoin. AT&T, some of the Burger Kings, KFCs, Subway, Twitch, Overstock, some of the Pizza Huts, Dallas Mavericks, Virgin Galactic. That's just to name a few, right? And there's going to be more and more that come online in due time. Just remember 4D, right? Decentralized, distributed, digital database, or decentralized distributed digital registry. That's what Bitcoin is. So with Bitcoin, rather than a central authority recording the transactions on a ledger, every user would all record the transactions in real time at the exact same time, and all users would keep a copy of the entire blockchain from Genesis to current time forever. So rather than one central bank having the ledger, every single individual that has a wallet of Bitcoin now keeps a ledger, keeps the entire blockchain, the entire ledger of every transaction from the birth of it to this very day. So if you come over here to blockchain.com and you go to their Explorer, the Bitcoin Explorer, you can see all the graphs and all these different things, all the estimated hash rates, how many transactions in 24 hours, the transaction volume, which is 2.99 million Bitcoin, the transaction volume in the East, and so forth, estimated, and all these other things. You can see the mempool sizes, the price of the Bitcoin, all that stuff, right? But down below all that, you can get the latest blocks, right? And you can come down through here and view all blocks, and you can go all the way back and check every single transaction that's ever taken place in every single block, all the way back to the genesis of Bitcoin. So let's go to the first ever transaction. So here we have block number 1, right? And it just says here that a block at height 1 in the Bitcoin blockchain, right? It's the very first block to ever be initiated, and it was initiated January 8th, 2009. And it tells us that the miners of this block earned a total reward of 50 BTC, which today's value would be $2,119,916. Right, this is the very first blockchain. This is the Genesis blockchain, or the Genesis block, or the 0.0000000 block. Right, the reward consisted of a base reward of 50 BTC or Bitcoin, with an additional 0 BTC reward paid as fees, because there was no fee for that first Genesis block, of the one transactions which were included in the block. The block rewards, also known as the Coinbase reward, were sent to this address, and so we can look at that address and determine who it was that basically did that first transaction. So if we just click on that, then we can see here's the address. We can scan the QR code and find out exact information, but there's the address here, and then you can run that address and determine all the different transactions that this address has done, including as late as February 5th, 2022, there have been transactions moved through this Bitcoin address. So this address, this first original address, this first wallet, is still active to this day. But in order to keep this video short, let's just very quickly go over a couple things. So currently, before Bitcoin, right, the only thing that you could do in order to move money was to go through a banking system or through some other third party that would take a transaction fee from you to do that movement of money. So that could be through the use of a credit card, which is through a central authority called a bank, right? But that as you use that credit card, there's a transaction fee that they collect, and they just get richer and richer and richer, especially when you have hundreds of millions of people all over the earth using that service. Then they're getting, 1 cent per million people, or $1 per million people. It's $1 million, whatever, right? All this money is just flowing constantly into them. Again, they have private ledgers. Nobody can access those ledgers. They're non-transparent. As Bitcoin is transparent, you can see every transaction to ever take place on every single address, etc., etc., etc. It's completely 100% transparent. We can trace and track every movement of everything and who has what, or what address has what. But in the central system, you go through a central authority, a trusted third party, a middleman, in order to transact money. What Bitcoin set out to do was to resolve that situation where it cuts out the middleman, cuts out the controllers, cuts out the central banks, and allows you to directly operate between you and another party. And to do it in such a way that it is trustless, that you do not need a trusted third party. Rather, the code makes sure that everything goes through. First of all, it checks to make sure that they have the currency that they say that they're going to give to you before you make the transaction. And then once the transaction goes through, everything is recorded on the blockchain. Nobody can say that it didn't happen, and everything is recorded, everything is legit. So the point and purpose of Bitcoin coming out was to replace that which was a serious issue that has been enslaving mankind for all of these years, ever since we had commodity money, right? We've had controllers in some, whether it was kings and emperors or international merchants that became bankers. Either way, all throughout time, we've had these individuals that have been controlling the issuance and controlling money in every regard all over this earth. And the only way to decentralize that, or to disrupt that system, is to create a system in which that every single individual that uses the monetary system has a copy of that ledger, and has a verification of every transaction that takes place to verify that it is a legitimate transaction and that the money actually did move, and all of these different sorts of things. So in the next video, in part 2 of Blockchain 1.0, we'll begin to discuss how is Bitcoin created, how does a coin get created, and all of these other different aspects of Bitcoin, because we need to understand all these things before we can move into Blockchain 2.0, right? So we'll cover a lot more detail in BTC or Bitcoin in the next video. This is just to get you an idea, a concept of how or what is Blockchain 1.0. Blockchain 1.0 is taking the concept of unique identification for digital documents and fingerprints or hash codes and all the other different things, as cryptography, and moving it into a decentralized, distributed digital database, right? 4D. Or a decentralized, distributed digital registry, however you want to look at it. Okay, so rather than allowing a single entity or a single family or a single anything to control the issuing and control of a commodity money, it is now being pushed out to where all individuals who use that commodity money all have a copy of the distributed database. The entire ledger of transactions are stored on that individual's computer, and this is distributed across millions of computers all over the earth, and every single one of these computers are verifying the transactions that are taking place, and earn those that are actually mining, which I don't mine because these computers cost from $6,000 on up to do Bitcoin mining. But if you want to do that, you have to find a different channel to learn all that. I don't do Bitcoin mining. I just don't. I mean, it's worth it, I reckon, because you got $45,000, $42,000 per Bitcoin, and And we're going to discuss in the next video what the halving of Bitcoin is, and what the current amount of Bitcoin you get when you do mine. And it is worth it, but you know, I'm not going to invest money into computers to run Bitcoin mining in order to reap Bitcoin. That's just not my thing. It may be for you. If it is, then great, go ahead and do it. And especially if you have $6,000, $12,000, or $18,000 to put into it, that's fine. Go do it. You know, it is worth it. You'll make $42,000 per Bitcoin that you do get that for each block that you verify. But nevertheless, we'll cover that in the next video. Again, I just want to make it simple here. What Bitcoin did is it took the concept of blockchain 0.0, the birth, the conception of blockchain, and it applied it to the monetary side of life. And it's taking away the control of the controllers in the monetary sphere and handing it back to you, the people. And the controllers, you know, that control the media, the news, the newspapers, the magazines, all the different things, are out here, and they are consistently attacking it, trying to keep people in their narrative and outside of cryptocurrency, which they cannot control. So the longer an individual is held in the prison of their narrative and continues down this path of the current movie to get everyone to their point of precipice, the longer that those people are going to suffer, because they have chosen to live a life of lies and deceptions rather than accepting the truth and what God is doing on this earth today. But either way, whether you stay in the narrative and continue down that path in the movie and in the narrative and continue with all these things that are going to pop up, eventually Trump coming back into office and all the other stuff, you're going to eventually end up at your precipice. And then once you do end up at your precipice, you're going to have this urge to change. And once that urge is there, once you have got to that point of absolute despotism and you don't know what else to do, your eyes will finally see, oh, okay, so we need to get into this where we, the people, once again have control of the monetary systems. And then you'll begin the process of helping develop the new world. Because right now, the current world is controlled by the controllers, right? What's happening is God is taking all of that control and handing it back to the people where it was intended to be before sin entered into the earth. Once sin entered into the earth, well, we're under the controllers, right? But after Christ, that's not the case. It's just that we had to go through this period of time where the saints were overtaken, and then after that, then it's handed over to the saints. The entire kingdom's handed over to the saints, and we enter into a whole new world in which there is righteousness and all these other different types of things. So let's cut the video here. This is part 1. We'll catch you in part 2 as soon as I get the time and ability to make the next part. I'll have that out to you guys. This video is now yours. We'll catch you guys in the next video. Father bless each and every one of you that come along, and hopefully this video has helped you in some way, and we'll catch you guys in the coming times.